New section is 2.7, and it's solving multiplication and division equations. So solving multiplication and division.
Do I give this to you or do I give this to John? Let's check.
Equations. So equations. So solving multiplication and division equations. So like I had said, this is real similar to what we did yesterday. You look at what was done to x, you do the inverse, or some people think of it as the opposite of what was done to x to get x back by itself again. I'm going to just kind of like try to reinforce that and write down, do the inverse operation to both sides. So do the inverse operation. I'll put it in all caps for dramatic emphasis. Do the inverse operation to both sides. So do the inverse operation to both sides. So first I want to do an example, and you'll see it's similar in some ways to yesterday, but in some ways it's different. I have x divided by 4, so x over 4 in a fraction equals 17. So different because we didn't do any multiplication or division yesterday. Similar in that something was done to x, and we know what the result is after x was divided by 4. We just want to figure out, well, what was x? So x was divided by 4, yes? Inverse of division. What undoes division? Go for it.
Multiplication.
Perfect, multiplication. So if we want to undo dividing by 4, we have to multiply by 4. But we know that x divided by 4 equals 17. To keep it equals, remember that pan balance from yesterday, or one side could be higher than the other? To keep it equal, you have to do the same thing to both sides. So if I multiply my left side by 4, that cancels out the 4 in the denominator, just gives me x by itself. Does that make sense they'd cancel?
Yes.
Okay. So then my right side now becomes 17 times 4, which should be a 68. And what I probably should be saying is, check your work. That when you have a quiz like this, it's possible to, when you turn in your quiz, to know that you had 100%. We started out with this problem here. Well, you could take and check and see, does that work? If you substitute the 68 in for the x, you could take your calculator, do 68 divided by 4 equals, and see if it gives you 17. If it does, you know you were right. If it doesn't, then go back and try to find your mistake. Does that make sense?
Yep.
I found, as a math teacher, if you have a huge story problem, a lot of times I'll stop reading at the beginning, and I'll just start at reading the very end of the paragraph first in the story problem, and that tells you what the question is, and then from there you can go back and figure out what it is. So I'm going to do this here. So you could write that as a note to yourself if you wanted to. So in a story problem, comma, the question is almost always at the end. And it's not that they do it that way on purpose. I found as I write story problems for tests, it just kind of is naturally how it flows. So sometimes you might want to go and read that last sentence, or read the last half of the last sentence, the last clause, and try to see what's there. And the question in the variable is going to be there at the end. So I want to put in parentheses, the variable is there too. I wouldn't write all this out. I just kind of want to show you what you're up against for the homework, and we can kind of pick it apart. So that last thing I had said was, in a story problem, the question is almost always at the end, the variable too. So sometimes I'll see a big paragraph, and I'll just jump right to the end. If he's willing to pay, so I have a typo there. So if he's willing to pay $187,245 now, if you want a lightweight sleigh that can fly, it's going to be expensive. How much did he pay for his last sleigh? So the question is, how much did he pay for his last sleigh? That's really what we're looking for. So that needs to be our unknown. So we need to pick a letter. We could do P for pay. We could do X because we're used to that. What do you guys want to do?
C. X.
Okay. So I'm hearing some X's, or at least I'll do the X. So the X is going to be the cost for the last sleigh. Now, a lot of times people aren't going to bother writing this out. And I'm okay with that, but if you get to a story problem and you're stuck, a good way to start, say, okay, what's my variable? Figure that out. And you might even want to just write it down so you don't have to keep track of it in your brain. So now we need to figure out how to take and make this into an equation. So Santa's shopping for a new sleigh. There's an increase in population. He's a bigger one. He's willing to pay 7 times as much as he did for his last sleigh. So if he's willing to pay 7 times as much as he did for his last sleigh, how do we write that as a math thing? We said X is the cost for the last sleigh. So we have X is going to be the original sleigh. And it says he's willing to pay 7 times as much as he did for his last sleigh. Does that make sense? You could say, well, 7 times X, 7 times the cost of his last sleigh. So that equals what he's willing to pay now. So it equals $187,245. So 7X, 7 times the cost of his last sleigh, is what he's willing to pay now. And now we go back to what we were doing yesterday, kind of, and in that first thing. We need to get X by itself. What was done to X?
Divide,
Well, what was done to X?
multiply,
Multiplied by,
7.
so the inverse of multiplying by 7 is going to be to, nice, divide by 7. So then my 7s will just cancel out, so we'll get X, the cost for the last sleigh. And if we punch that in, it would be 26,749. I don't know if I'd write all this quite yet. 0.285714. Can Santa really be willing to pay that? What should we do to this number to make it legitimate for money?
Round.
0.29. Because it's money, we're going to round it to 2 decimal points. So we need to round it to right there. Because the next number is a 5. 5 and above, give it a shove, so we make it go higher. So money rounded to 2 decimal points. So the last sleigh cost Santa $26,749.29. Now he's willing to pay 7 times that. Does that make sense to people? Final comment. In your homework, I'm looking again for, 1, you to write this in blue. Give me the original equation. 2, show me what you did to both sides. So don't just do a divided by 7 on the left. I want to see it on both sides. And then give me your final answer. So I'm looking for those 3 steps in all your homework questions to get full credit. All the ones that are solving for variables.